Welcome back to part 3 of our Power Platform ALM video series. So in this video, we're actually going to get into quite a juicy bit, which is actually creating a pipeline. So we're going to see some things automatically happen after the fruits, being the fruits of our labor. So let's get on to the labor portion of this. The first thing we're going to want to do is come into Azure Devops. We're at our organization level. We're going to go into our ALM project that we've been working on. Once within the project, we're going to click on the gear icon in the bottom left-hand corner. We're going to confirm a couple of things. We're going to confirm that we've got a service connection, which we set up in a previous video. The key thing to remember here at the moment is the application user that's bound to that Azure app registration only currently exists in development, but that's fine for the first pipeline that we're creating. We also want to check under parallel jobs that we have got the free tier available. If you've not got that, you do the form, which I referenced in the description of a previous video. Fill out this form, specify it as private. If you do public, you're going to need additional information and make sure your repositories are of the public type. And then it doesn't really take too long before that is in effect. So coming back, let's actually get down to business. So we're going to want to click on this nice rocket icon for our pipelines, and we're going to want to create a pipeline. So we're not just going to do everything in one pipeline, we're going to do it in logical steps. So the first step being that we want to export an unmanaged solution from our development environment, unpack it and commit it to source control. So we're going to use our Power Platform Test Studio solution. Key call out is one of the variables we'll populate. We'll want the name of the solution, which will be the actual name without the spaces here, as opposed to the display name. So coming on back, for here, our code is going to be Azure Repos Git, but for the code for the pipeline, we're essentially going to use the classic editor. Confirm that the repository is down as ALM project. We have done it as an Azure Repos Git, and then our branch being main. So we're going to click continue, and you could choose one of these, but we're going to do this as an empty job. So we're going to select empty job. And now we're going to first populate our required variables ahead of time, but actually we're not, because part of the tasks and the script that we're going to use is going to basically highlight what variables are required. So coming back, if we click on tasks, we're going to give, I'm just going to make sure we rename this to something actually meaningful. So we're going to call this export from development. In fact, I'm going to go a bit further, because really you'll want to have a series of pipelines per solution. So we're going to do export Power Platform Studio from development. So then in terms of tasks, we're going to click the plus icon next to the agent, and we're going to search for our Power Platform build tools. The first thing we're going to want to do in most of these pipelines is make available the Power Platform build tool actions. And to do that, we need to install the Power Platform tool installer. So we select that one and then click add. And that's as simple as that. You don't need to do anything beyond that. The next task is where we're going to actually export the solution. So we're going to look for the Power Platform export solution, and then click add. So you'll see that some settings are required. We'll keep adding the other tasks that we need. So once we've exported the solution unmanaged, because that means when it gets imported again, it'll go in as unmanaged. We then need to unpack that solution, because we can't just, source control isn't going to work over a single zip file. It needs to have it broken down into the individual files for source control to properly work. So that's why this bit's critical. Then once we've unpacked the unmanaged solution, we then need to run a script that's going to commit that to our Azure Devops project repository. And that's going to become the source of truth for the development code that's going to track the changes as it's developed for future iterations. So the next task is not going to be one of the Power Platform build tools. You can do this command line, but I'm a big fan of PowerShell, so just do it PowerShell. So let's look at what we need to fill in for these. Next, with the Power Platform export solution task selected, we'll want to make use of our service connection. But as we've done it as the service principal, we'll need to make sure that that radio is selected before it becomes available. Now here, these are essentially working off of variables, so just bear with me in terms of what we're using, because some of these are kind of known directory paths. These will become the variables that will populate, as we mentioned earlier, one of those being the solution name. And then we can pretty much leave all of this as is. You'll see a critical option here, which we don't want at this stage, and that is to export as managed. So we leave that one unchecked at this point, but that will become a critical selection in a future pipeline. So once happy with that, we can see that it's no longer showing us that some settings need attention. We'll now move on to the Power Platform Unpack solution. So with the Power Platform Unpack solution selected, we're going to want to specify our solution input file, which you'll notice is basically the same as the output file from the previous task. Then we've got the target folder that we want to unpack the solution to, the type of solution, which will be unmanaged, and then pretty much we can leave everything else as is. For the script, I'm going to copy this from a previous one. Now, if you do this from, and we're going to do it inline, so we're not going to specify a path to a file that has a script. We're going to put the script in here. The main gotcha, if you copy this, because I've not done anything really beyond Microsoft documentation here. The only things, if you do put in the Microsoft documentation, you're going to want to change this user email. You're going to want to change the Git checkout that might possibly say master to main. You're going to want to change master to head : main if you're doing it within Azure DevOps, because I think there's been some transition from the use of master, and you can't just specify main. The head : is critical. But when you try and run these pipelines, it can be a bit trial and error. It's okay if it fails. You just have to work through the errors. So the type of error that you would get in this case is the pipeline would all be fine, and you just get an error around the committing to the repository, and then you kind of know where the problem area is. So we'll just double check all of this, and that seems to be fine. And then the next thing we're going to do at this stage is I'm going to actually say just save. I'm just going to leave it in the root. Probably recommended to put I'll put initial pipe, initial export from dev pipeline setup, save. And now we'll come to the variables. Although we've still not got them, but I have a sneaking suspicion that I have done this completely backwards. So just bear with me a moment. To be honest, I think I'm just confusing myself. I think I've done it via a YAML script previously, and that's prompted the variable. But anyway, we do need the variables because we've specified them as part of our tasks. So one of those variables being solution name, and for the value in our case, as confirmed with the solution that we're running this pipeline for, we're going to put in the name as opposed to the display name. I'm just going to double check if we want anything else. So all of the other ones are pretty standard, to be fair. So and some of them are like more environment variables. So if we just come to our tasks again, that's kind of like standard. That's the one that we just populated. So effectively, we could have typed something there. And then we've got the staging directory, and then again, the use of the solution name. So let's give it a whirl. So this time we'll do save and queue. I'm going to put save comment. I'm going to put first export from dev pipeline run. I'm going to leave agent pool the same, agent specification, branch main, and then click save and run. And this is where it starts to get exciting. To see really what's happening, if you then click on the agent that's running the job, and this is where you get to see it run through all of the tasks. So initially, I'm just going to pause up whilst it waits to run, because at the moment it's queued. So here we can see it's now starting to run. So this is where it's a bit fingers crossed, but it should all be fine. So we've got the checking out of the ALM project main branch. That all seems to have run fine. We've then got it making available the Power Platform tool installer. Probably the meat of this pipeline is going to be the exporting of the solution, depending on its size. We can see here that we've got a successful connection, so that bodes well. And now it's going to give itself some time to export the solution, but you can see that there is a timeout, so it can't run indefinitely, nor would you want it to run indefinitely. Then we've got the unpacking of the solution, and then we've got the commit, and it's always this one that causes me the most grief. So I'm going to troubleshoot this. We'll come back and then we'll see what the issue is. But first, we'll just have a quick look at what the error was. Yeah, so these are the sort of errors that are down to the repository. So path spec main did not match any files known to Git. 34 files changed. So it's kind of detected the files, push. System access token is not recognized as the name of a commandlet or operable. In fact, I think that's more the issue actually. And this may well be because this was a script that was previously used for just a username and password rather than a service principal. So I'll go away and troubleshoot this, and then we'll come back with the answer. Sorry, so I noobed it a bit in that, and this is when you look at what the option is in a nutshell. So selecting the agent allows scripts to access the OAuth token. Can't even talk now. So with that selected, we'll do save and queue again. save and run, and we'll see what the outcome is this time. But essentially that toggle permits you from allowing downstream tasks to make use of, or scripts to make use of the token that you authenticated with. So we'll click on the job again, and when it runs, we'll come back and see how it goes. We now have another error which we're going to work through, which will be the permissions against the repository.